Hello and welcome to Web Relates. Today we're looking at the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Our first story is by a deleted user. Malicious Compliances temporarily loses £65,000. I used to work at a cash center. All the security trucks would collect cash from businesses during the day. We would open the packages, credit their accounts, and the cash would be bundled and shipped back out to banks and cash machines. I worked the night shift, and it became an unwritten rule that when you finished your work, you could go. Well, one evening, we had a new manager who singled me out to stay and help the team who loaded the money for cash machines. Now, this was a job I'd never done before. I tried to ask a few questions like, how much do we put in each bundle? How much should we have in each box? Only to be met with an aggressive, just put the cash in the box, it's not rocket science. Okay, you're the boss. So I put the cash in the box. When the box was full, I pushed the cash down and fit even more in. I kept going until I physically could not put another note in, and used all of my weight to close the cash box. Well, it turns out they were only supposed to contain £100,000, and the crap hit the fan when they did the last checks, and they thought they were £65,000 short. They ordered a full recount of all the boxes. When the one I had packed was opened, it practically exploded. There was cash everywhere. One of the girls who worked the section was stunned you could actually fit that much in one of the boxes. I would like to say I had the I told you so moment of being confronted, but the manager said nothing, and once the boxes were repacked, I went home. I never got asked to cover that section again, though. Our next story is by Heidi Hole. Take you to the ER for something I can fix for free? Okay. This is a story my dad told me a while ago about one of the outings he had with his brother-in-law, we'll call Kyle, many years ago. He didn't provide too many details, but it's just enough to share this story. For context, my dad and my uncle Kyle were very different people. My dad was very much a DIYer who learned a lot about how to try to fix things himself, and what to do if something happens with tools, like nails, hammers, fishing hooks, etc. My uncle Kyle was the opposite. He was one of those people who just paid other people to do things for him, or just complained when he couldn't get his way. Basically, never let other people tell him what to do if they weren't trained professionals. One day, sometime in the late 80s to mid-90s, my dad and Uncle Kyle went on a fishing trip because my mom and aunt wanted them to hang out more and get some bonding time in. They didn't really have much in common except for their wives being sisters and having kids of their own. During this, Uncle Kyle somehow managed to get a fishing hook through the top layer of skin on his thumb, with the end of it poking out. Uncle Kyle started screaming and rocking the boat, yelling, "This hurts so much! Call an ambulance! Get me to the ER! Now!" My dad said, I know how to get that hook out of a finger. It happened to me before. What you need to do is get a pair of pliers and cut the hook part off, and pull it out of your... I don't care! I'm injured! Take me inland! Find a payphone and call an ambulance! Are you sure? I have a first aid kit and the tools to... Now! Well, if you insist. So Dad rowed the boat to shore, found a payphone, and my Uncle Kyle called for directions to the nearest ER. My dad drove them both there, and my dad waited patiently in the waiting room for Uncle Kyle to come out. Not 10 minutes later, Uncle Kyle came out with a bandage on his thumb and a scowl on his face, which was pretty much his resting face. Before the doctor went back to his area, my dad went up and asked him how they got the hook out. Turns out they did exactly what my dad was going to do. Cut the spikes off the end of the hook and pull the thing out slowly. The only difference was that it cost my Uncle Kyle $200 and an "I told you so" from my dad. My dad said that after that, they never did any solo trips ever again. My uncle blamed my dad for the whole ordeal, even though he was the one putting the hook on the line. He was fine. He just complained about everything. Miss you, Dad. Thanks for a fun story to share. Our next story is by Compile Commit. Strictly work from office. Backstory. This happened almost 10 years ago. I was looking for a change for my first job. My first company had a great work-from-home policy, so I was looking for an opportunity with a similar work-from-home policy. Story. Back in 2014-15, I was looking for a job. 5 years had passed in my first job, and I was looking for a better opportunity. At the time, I was working as a Java developer at a company that is known as a telecom service provider. I was finding several opportunities, but none had a good work-from-home policy, and I had grown quite accustomed to the policy my first company had. This was years before COVID normalized work from home, and it was hard to find a good work from home policy at most companies. Eventually, I had to forego my requirements. I was about to join a company, and I asked the HR about work from home, and received the most strict response that I had received of all the companies before. It is a strictly work-from-office opportunity. The pay was really good, almost twice what I was making, so I tried my best to look at that bright side. I also asked HR to add the strictly work-from-office only in my contract. Thinking they have got the better of me, they oblige. This additional clause would later lead me to the malicious compliance in question. After joining and getting inducted into the project team, I found out that the team was short at least 4 people. Due to this, everyone was overworked, and people were working 60 to 70-hour weeks while getting no overtime. I was the only one with my area of expertise, and I was taken as a replacement of someone who was about to leave. Beginning of the second week, and there is a meeting where the domain lead comes up and congratulates the team regarding their latest success, explains how the project has made the company a hefty profit, and how we are going to get a pizza party soon. I realized right then and there the toxic culture the company has, where people overworking without additional pay or promotion or bonus when it makes the company money. I make sure to get a locker at the office and start leaving my laptop at the office locker at the end of the day. For the first 3 weeks, this poses no problem, as I'm getting training, knowledge transfer. Once my training is completed and the person training me leaves, I get my first batch of work. The work volume will easily take 80 hours. That's 2 business weeks. I am given 6 days to complete it. I work at my normal pace. At the end of the 6th day, lead asks me for the delivery of my part, and I say that I am only 60% done, and it will take me another 4 days to complete. Apparently, that's not going to cut it, and I am pulled into a meeting with the project manager. He wants to know what the problem is. I tell him, this requires 80 hours. I have done about 6 days of work, which is 48 hours. I need an additional 4 days. He says, and I quote, "Work at home. That's why you have a laptop that you can take home." Cue malicious compliance. I politely apologize and say that I am unable to do so, as my contract says that I am prohibited to work from home. Manager is not convinced. He schedules a new meeting the next day with me and HR to go through my contract. There it is, in black and white. Working from office only. Working from home not permitted. I mentioned that I had tried my best to get work from home before joining, and was vehemently denied the opportunity to. Manager is at a loss of words. HR is also dumbfounded. Long story short, for the next 8 months, I worked at my normal pace. During end-of-year salary review discussion, I am given the opportunity to work from home. I asked them to add overtime clause that would pay me additional for every hour worked after 8 hours every day. They disagreed. I disagreed to take work from home. Every other teammate refused work from home in their salary review and asked for overtime clause as well. We stopped getting pizza parties. Our next story is by Colonel Baby. I don't know how to fill your cup all the way. Okay. For many years, I was the opening server or bartender for the weekend breakfast at a country club in a gated community for active adults. Technically, it was 65 and up, although up to 10% of the population could be 55 to 64. However, that was never an issue. I would say most were 70 and up. I've never minded customers who were picky and complicated, as long as they weren't jerks. I've learned how to put up with a lot. My goal was to give everyone exactly what they wanted as efficiently as possible, and since the majority of the clientele were regulars, it became fairly easy to remember everyone's particulars. I had a regular in his mid to late 70s who was a crankly old thing, but harmless. His ribbing was easy to ignore for the most part. I knew what he wanted, got it out, got my tip, and carried on. Hell, sometimes we even got along. He was either by himself, with a friend from outside the community, with his 2 sons, or the whole lot of them. Despite being a brunette, he always called me, and most other women working, Blondie. Our universal name, apparently. "Hey, Blondie, get me a top-off. Hey, Blondie, I need some more ketchup." And he was just generally pessimistic, like someone had pissed in his Cheerios. His sons always gave me apologetic looks. I would shrug or laugh something off, and they'd tip me a bit extra. He would tap his coffee cup if he needed a refill. Hey, I don't mind. Don't need to get in a whole conversation. I get in, get out, and on to checking the next table. I would always fill a cup to about 3/4 inches from the top. Seemed reasonable, and no one had ever complained. These aren't large cups, but it was enough room to add cream or sugar, or to just not spill on yourself. After a year or 2, that was no longer acceptable. He randomly started making comments about how I, or others, didn't know how to fill a cup up. I would usually smile, joke, and add a bit more. But one morning, it was slammed. I was bartending with a fairly full bar, taking to-go orders on the phone, getting the golfers food or drinks after their first 9, and had 2 4-tops in addition to that. Of course, he wanted my section. It was busy, but I was sailing. Getting to work at 6:30 a.m. didn't always have me in the best mood, but one musters through. Fake it till you make it. But all 4 of them were there, and he had an audience to whom he could show off his condescending comments. His mighty prowess, cutting down a 25-year-old woman and putting her in her place. He had already complained about my inability to pour a proper cup of coffee. I was going to greet a table, when all of a sudden he says, "Hey Blondie," and taps on his cup. So, with a crap-eating grin, I filled it to the very tip-top, not even a drop spilling out. His son's eyes grew large. He started to sputter, trying to ineloquently say that's not what he wanted. No, sir. I never know how to fill up a cup. Wouldn't want to have that." He grumbled, of course, and his son's eyes finally started twinkling. They finished their food, paid, and left. He never did complain again about my inability to refill his coffee. My revenge was minor, but the satisfaction was sweet. Got to get joy in that industry somewhere, right? Okay, everyone, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe. And then I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. Cheers.